Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I welcome you to the 185th Annual General Meeting. My name is Shruti Rathod and I will be your host today. To begin the proceedings, may I invite Mr. Sandeep Khosla, Director General, Bombay Chamber, to deliver the welcome and introductory remarks.
Thank you, Shruti. Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Nandan Nilekani, Mr. Sudhir Kapadia, Ms. Anjali Bansal, Mr. Nilesh, past presidents, member of the Bombay Chamber Board, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to each one of you at the 185th Annual General Meeting of the Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which, as most of you know, is one of the oldest chamber of commerce in India. The chamber, which has been providing continuous and unstinting service to its esteemed members during its history of 184 years, is organizing its annual general meeting virtually since last year due to the unforeseen pandemic. As the pandemic hit, bringing everything to a standstill, we at the chamber decided to treat this adversity into an opportunity and set about converting our entire operation to digital. Mr. Kapadia will be addressing us on the chamber's achievements during the year gone by, and Ms. Anjali Bansal will be underlining the focus areas going forward. Hence, I will briefly touch upon some ongoing initiatives taken by the chamber, keeping in view the benefits of our member community, both the large corporates and MSMEs. Membership drive, being the lifeline of the chamber, a membership drive was undertaken, wherein, in addition to bringing in new members, many old members who had resigned in the past were aggressively pursued and reinstated. Here I am extremely thankful to all our past presidents and board members for their complete help and support. Certificate of Origin, that's on a digital platform, in line with its theme, Corporates for a Change, the chamber had, during the last year, taken the initiative of providing online endorsements of CEO certificates to our customers via emails. Simultaneously, the chamber had developed COO online portal, that's a Certificate of Origin digital portal, which now is fully functional and is equipped with the payment gateway. Our ADB project, that's Asian Development Bank, along with whom we have taken up this project, with the objective of facilitating trade links and investments of SMEs across India and the greater Mekong region, thereby promoting regional opportunities of investment and trade and supporting internationalization of small and medium-sized enterprises. IFC, Indian Finance Corporation, and Bombay Chamber have tied up for a research study for a find out the significant missing link of gender in private sector and to help understand declining female labor participation in Mumbai. Bombay Chamber launched its coffee table book, Resilience Refined. It is showcase of the team Bombay Chambers of Commerce and Industry, its various initiatives and achievements, along with the compilation of select knowledge webinars, which the chamber had during the COVID-19 lockdown. COVID initiatives and media coverage, Bombay Chamber has appealed to its member to contribute towards helping the COVID-19 warriors in the early April last year. It's a matter of pride that our members graciously and generously contributed both in cash and kind to assist the government and municipal hospitals in and around the city of Mumbai. Bombay Chamber received encouraging media coverage for this initiative. I would also like to take this opportunity to stress upon one of our other major initiatives, namely the Center for Mediation and Conciliation, that has been working tirelessly to spread awareness about mediation to resolve commercial disputes. We believe that justice should not only be put on hold. Hence, in order to overcome this lockdown, CMC has provided an infrastructure for remote mediation and online mediation, which is already seeing successful conclusion of cases. Before I conclude, I would like to welcome each one of you again and express my sincere thanks to all our members for their continued support to the initiatives and activities of the chamber. I would like to request Shruti to coordinately invite Mr. Sudhir Kapadia to do the presidential address. Thank you. Over to you, Shruti.
Thank you, sir. It is an honor that we are part of the 185th AGM of the chamber. To grace this special occasion, may I request Mr. Sudhir Kapadia, President, Bombay Chamber, and partner and National Tax Leader, Ernst Young LLP, to deliver the presidential address.
Thank you, Shruti, and thank you, Sandeep. And at the outset, Sandeep, you as well as the entire team at Bombay Chambers, a big thank you. I completely echo kind of challenges which we collectively faced and overcame, and with the support of all our board members and the members of the chamber. Thank you and a warm welcome to all of you for making time and joining us on this 185th annual general meeting. Distinguished chief guest, Mr. Nandan Nilekani, co-founder, chairman, Infosys, and of course the father of Aadhaar, as we know in our country, Mrs. Anjali Bansal, Mr. Nilekani, past presidents, members of the consular court, members of the media, and all of you, ladies and gentlemen, once again, a warm welcome. I think, as we heard from Sandeep, that the chamber was able to carry out quite a few of the activities in a virtual world. And if we just step back, as we may all recollect in the last AGM, what we decided was that we will have an underlying theme of corporate for change. And under that underlying theme of corporate for change, we said 2 or 3 things we will focus on. Of course, at that time, nobody had anticipated COVID. But it is with great, it is really nice and good that we were able to still achieve some of the, I wouldn't say all, but some of those objectives under the Corporate for Change initiative. I think the first and foremost, I would say that when we talked about Corporate for Change, we also said that as corporates, as members, we should be doing 2 things. One is to go back to our ethos, to our DNA. Bombay Chambers, if we go back in its history, has always resolved to be an impartial intermediary between business and government. And I would stress that the emphasis has been on being an impartial intermediary in a constructive way, to give criticism where it is due, but also to offer solutions, and also to ensure that what we are presenting to the government of the day are solutions and not just problems, and not just which is applicable to a particular lobby group or a particular company. So when media, particularly in our country, talks about chambers as lobby groups, I get a feeling that that may not be the right way, or at least not for Bombay Chambers to be known as. And therefore, I would say that Bombay Chambers, I would think that if we go back in our history, our tradition, we have always prided ourselves being this intermediary, which is impartial and which is not representing a particular lobby. The only lobby we represent is the national interest. And that has been borne out by, if you really at some stage have an opportunity to look back at how we have functioned over the century, actually. So with that in mind, coming to COVID, the DG already talked about, the fantastic contribution by our members. But I would just like to draw attention to the unfortunate second wave, which we all know hit our country around April, May. And the finance minister herself reached out to all the chambers in the country to apprise us of what government had done and was trying to do in those tumultuous days and weeks. And I'm glad to share with all of you that we took this up. We took up this outreach from the government in the right spirit. We went to our experts, we went to our stakeholders, and we made some very specific recommendations, be it on procurement strategy, be it on transparency, which we thought the central government should improve upon in terms of how and what is being supplied to each state, to each union territory, and also communication on a regular basis. We did not shy away from pointing out what perhaps was not working out in the desired manner with the best of intentions at that stage. And I think the government took this in the right spirit, in addition to all the other representations I'm sure they received. When we look at the policy which got announced later on vaccinations particularly, a lot of the suggestions from the chambers were duly incorporated, and I must thank the government for being very open in receiving these kind of suggestions from stakeholders and from the experts in the field. The customary budget representation which the Bombay Chamber does, I would like to call out this year because again, this was an unprecedented year. And the chamber decided that besides the normal fiscal representations, what needs to be done at the macroeconomic level in these unprecedented times. So I'll just name 2 or 3 suggestions, nothing new. They were being made earlier, but we backed it up with more research, more insights, more data. Was the suggestion for accelerated disinvestment. Today, the announcement is expected on the details of the monetization program, the bad bank structure, and of course, the institution of the DFI. our expert subcommittees played a pivotal role in informing the government and the policymakers and some of the nuances of some of these recommendations and suggestions, which, as we know, have found favor in the right spirit by the government. The Chamber also undertakes an economic outlook survey, the USP being, the difference being that we do it especially keeping in mind our MSMEs, which constitute about 60% of our membership. And we have every year been sharing this with the governor, with the governor of the Reserve Bank of India. And actually, a lot of the insights which we get from this survey have been useful in informing some of the monetary policy parameters of the Reserve Bank. Actually, during the pandemic, one of the suggestions, very critical suggestions, which were made by our MSME committee, which the governor was kind enough to agree to, was the extension of the scheme for credit guarantee without additional collateral. I think it benefited a lot of our MSME members all over the country, not just the members of the chamber. The other aspect, which, as you may recollect, those of you who attended last year, we had the Minister of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Piyush Goyal, and he kind of gave a shout out to the chamber to say, why don't you come back and tell us what we need to do to still better the ease of doing business rankings. He pointed out 4 dimensions where India still lacks still lacks traction or is rated very low in the ranking: starting business, registering property, paying taxes, and enforcement of contracts. The chamber took that suggestion on its chin. We said, yes, let's go and do what we can in this area. We collaborated with EY, and we went out and took suggestions from all of you, from the members, from stakeholders. We concentrated on these very aspects, not to just celebrate what was going well. And we shared these findings both with the state government as well as the central government. I'm sure we will, the chamber will do well to follow that up and see that we continue to help the government, and hopefully our overall ranking will improve, including on these parameters as well. What we said as a chamber is that let us not lose sight of, as we said in the overall philosophy of corporate for change, going beyond just economic development. And especially during COVID times, as we know, aspects like health particularly and environment have to be duly considered. It is telling that before the Code Zero report came out, it was the first time I read something which is so stark when it comes to our environment. It is just so very timely, and we were fortunate to have Mr. Jayant Sinha on the topic of Net Zero Bharat. As some of you may know, he is a pioneer in this field. In Parliament, he has mooted a private member's bill, and the chamber has taken it upon itself to continue to work with Mr. Sinha and his team, following on that discussion which he had with us during that session. And we have created a task force which will, as I said, work with them. And then we will provide practical recommendations from a business perspective, as also from the sustainability perspective, to take some concrete steps to achieve this very, very audacious goal, I would say, of Net Zero Bharat. But that's the vision, and I think we have been privileged to be called out by Mr. Sinha for this task. We also had, and it is very apt for the session we are going to have from our chief guest today. We just recently had an interaction with Mr. Sharad Sharma of the India Stack for the digital payments way forward, something which Anjali is very passionate about. You'll hear more from her in her address, and I think it is very, very important that just as the chamber celebrates its hoary past, we should also embrace the future, which is going to be extremely critical when it comes to adopting digitization and technology. So I'll just end by saying that the chamber has strived to be shoulder to shoulder with the government in these trying times, giving constructive suggestions as we are in this year of India at 75. Not too very far away, the chamber will be approaching its second centenary, and not too later after that, in a decade's time, India will be celebrating 100 years of its independence. So I would say beyond year-to-year priorities, which we all will engage in, it's a great opportunity for the Chamber to look at a long-term program of national development as the Chamber marches towards its second centenary and helps in nation building as India marches towards its century after independence. Thank you very much. And with this, I hand over to Mrs. Anjali Bansal. Welcome, Anjali.
Thank you very much, Sudhir, for those always inspiring, uplifting words. And I will share with everyone, it has been such a pleasure and privilege to work under Sudhir's leadership in the last 1 year. And I look forward to carrying the baton forward this year. I am tasked with sharing the mission vision for the Chamber in the coming year. But as Sudhir mentioned, 1 year is a small snapshot really in a continuous stream. We are a 185-year-old Chamber. And much as we celebrate our legacy and our traditions, which are rich and very positive, we also look to the future. So on that note, let me start first by welcoming Shri Nandan Nilekani, our distinguished chief guest. Thank you very much for joining us today, Nandan. For the 185th AGM of the Chamber, he has kindly agreed to grace us as the keynote speaker and the chief guest. Welcome also to our past presidents, distinguished guests, and honored members. I stand here before you today in all humility as the least and last, currently the last, but certainly not last in the least, in the line of all the distinguished past presidents whom I really look to for guidance and inspiration. I'm honored to assume the office of the President of the Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry today at the 185th Annual General Meeting. The Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or BCCI as we refer to it, has played a significant role in the last close to 2 centuries of industrial and economic development, not just of this city, but actually of the country, since Mumbai is the commercial capital of the country. I continue to look forward to working with the distinguished BCCI board members, various working committees, chairs of the committees, the Director General and the Secretariat who have ably supported and enabled. We are only as good really as the DG and his team, as we often say. So I look forward to working together. They have been instrumental in the progress of BCCI, espousing many causes and achieving many milestones. The pandemic reiterated the importance of technology as jobs went remote, education became online, and trade shifted to digital. COVID, in some ways, had the unexpected positive impact on accelerating the pace of digitization across both India and Bharat. We've had the good fortune of massive population scale digital infrastructure in the form of Aadhaar, UPI, India Stack, which have really enabled us through this connection of Aadhaar with Jan Dhan and mobile phones to be able to very seamlessly almost transition into a massively digitized economy. And we continue to see the digitization of segments that were otherwise earlier not quite on the technology spectrum. We will talk a little bit more about them as we move forward into our mission. But it is in this background that I'm delighted to present the mission statement to this august audience today. Sudhir mentioned corporates for change. We believe that corporates have a role to play in the economy, but also in society and the polity to promote sustainable, social, economic, financial, and environmental initiatives with the following 4 key elements, which the Chamber is seeking to install as its pillars. First is sustainable economic growth. Biggest challenge of our time today is balancing economic growth and prosperity with climate change. If nothing else, the COVID pandemic has brought to the fore that we are, first of all, in a globally interconnected, interrelated ecosystem. Whatever happens in one city, one country, one climate ecosystem cannot be isolated. Nobody is an island, so we are all interconnected. We have to work together to deliver and build a cleaner, greener world, and frankly, build back better for not just our present, but also future generations, in favor of a balance between growth, environmental, and social considerations. Sudhir mentioned the Chamber hosted Shri Jayant Sinha. We will continue to work with his team and understand and support with our corporates and our MSMEs and our startups not just Bharat Net Zero, but really driving the green frontier. We believe that getting to this green frontier will create a massive investment boom. It is not just a nice to have, it is actually a must have, and we will capture the opportunity that comes from crores of high quality jobs and sustainable prosperity in the decades to come. Bombay Chamber's mission for FY 21-22 has been to take initiatives to make India hyper-competitive, environmentally sustainable, and highly resilient in dealing with big shocks such as the GFC and the COVID-19 pandemic. Our second pillar is ease of doing business. Sudhir also mentioned that Honorable Minister Goyal had tasked the chamber, and we did deliver against that with coming up with what can help India get even better on EODB, as it is called. In the recent past, with strong government support, India has launched several initiatives that help in growing business with programs such as Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, ease of doing business, amongst others. The focus of the government has been towards positioning the nation as a preferred investment destination and generating ample employment opportunities in the country. The Chamber's collective objective of all activities will continue to be to enhance industry attractiveness and growth in our ecosystem here in Mumbai, but across the country. We say Mumbai, but we know that Mumbai is the commercial capital. A lot of our leading industries are actually headquartered in Mumbai, and hence we seek to drive the country forward together with them. Our third pillar continues to be, and this is a continuing theme, is diversity and inclusion. Unlocking the undertapped powerhouse of women, integrating them into our economic agenda and nation building initiatives. But going beyond gender into furthering and fostering a more inclusive culture through thought and action is something that Chamber will also strive to do. We are working with IFC to launch the first ever for IFC anywhere in the world study on access to employment and job opportunities for women in the city of Mumbai. Finally, but not the least, is the digital frontier. Now more than ever, it is clear that digitization, digital services are critical to every 21st century economy. India today has 57 unicorns. It seems like every day a new one is minted. And while it seems that these are being born overnight, they're actually coming through the last decade of systematic fostering of entrepreneurship, the mobilizing of capital, talent, ideas, and technology to create literally new businesses. And these are not overnight, they have taken time and effort to do so. So today, digital services are filling gaps when national or global emergencies interrupt more traditional modes of commerce. In India, as I mentioned earlier, we have been fortunate. I think our biggest innovation really has been the PPP model of India Stack, Aadhaar, and UPI. The Chamber will aim to work along with the startup and regulatory ecosystems and large companies to harness the forces of innovation and entrepreneurship. We will seek to leverage the Chamber's unique access and fairly unique positioning across the business ecosystem to bring together the agendas of large companies, MSMEs, and startups, democratizing digital access, using innovation and technology to solve some very large fundamental problems such as credit access, healthcare, education are areas that the Chamber membership cares deeply about, and we are committed to supporting. We also believe that there are many new business opportunities that sit at this convergence of digitization and business. I would like to close my mission statement by emphasizing that in the coming year, along with my able colleagues at the Chamber, we will continue to give shape and effectively contribute to the city and nation alike in the four pillars of the Chamber's mission. We look forward to your partnership and support on more big ideas, bold moves, and collaboration on implementation on some of these programs that we have talked about. You will keep hearing from us. We invite you to engage, to send us your ideas, and we welcome more and more participation from all members. Please join us in committees, and let's work towards a more prosperous, sustainable, and inclusive future. Thank you all very much for being with us today. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Ms. Bansal. Hello, can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, Shruti, please continue.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Bansal. It's now time for the keynote address by our chief guest, Mr. Nandan Nilekani. Mr. Nandan Nilekani is the co-founder and chairman of Infosys Technologies Limited. He was the founding chairman of the Unique Identification Authority of India in the rank of a cabinet minister from 2009 to 2014. Most recently, Mr. Nilekani has co-founded and is the chairman of EkStep, a not-for-profit effort to create a learner-centric, technology-based platform to improve basic literacy and numeracy for millions of children. Mr. Nilekani was born in Bangalore and received his bachelor's degree from IIT Bombay. Fortune magazine conferred him with Asia's Businessman of the Year 2003. In 2005, he received the prestigious Joseph Schumpeter Prize for Innovative Services in Economy, Economic Sciences and Politics. In 2006, he was awarded the Padma Bhushan. He was also named Businessman of the Year by Forbes Asia. Time magazine listed him as one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2006 and 2009. Foreign Policy magazine listed him as one of the top 100 global thinkers in 2010. He won the Economist Social and Economic Innovation Award for his leadership of India's Unique Identification Initiative, Aadhaar. In 2017, he received the Lifetime Achievement Award from E&Y. CNBC TV 18 conferred India Business Leader Award for Outstanding Contributor to the Indian Economy 2017, and he also received the 22nd Nike Asia Prize for Economic and Business Innovation 2017. He has been inducted as an internationally honorary member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in 2019. Mr. Nandan Nilekani is the author of Imagining India and co-authored his second book with Viral Shah, Rebooting India, Realizing a Billion Aspirations. May I request Mr. Nilekani to deliver his keynote address. Requesting members to post their questions in the Q&A chat box. The questions will then be compiled and moderated by Ms. Anjali Bansal.
Thank you, Shruti, and thank you, Sudhir and Anjali, for inviting me to give this keynote address at the great Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I think of myself as a Bombayite, a Mumbaiite, whatever it is. I spent 5 years at IIT Bombay and worked in Bombay for 3 years before co-founding Infosys. So Bombay is a very special place for me, and I'm delighted to be here with all of you. I've been tasked today to talk about the thing of how did we transforming India through public digital infrastructure. One of the things which India has done very well over the last decade or so is create various types of population scale digital infrastructure, which now in retrospect have had a dramatic impact, not only on the economy, but on productivity, equity, and all the other things that we want in governance. The Aadhaar project was something which was initiated in 2006. I joined the government in 2009 and worked there for 5 years. And today, 1.3 billion people have an Aadhaar number, and it is a foundational ID for a wide variety of things. For example, people have used Aadhaar not only for authentication of identity, but it's also an electronic KYC or know your customer. And that's very useful. For example, if you want to open a bank account, get a mobile connection, buy a mutual fund or whatever. And this has had a dramatic impact on the financial inclusion, with 700 million people having bank accounts linked to Aadhaar in the last 5 to 6 years. This particularly came in handy during the pandemic. India now has the world's most elaborate digital infrastructure for direct cash transfer. And during the pandemic around the world, as you know, many governments decided to help the most vulnerable people by giving them cash assistance. But nobody really had the kind of digital infrastructure India had. And India was able to transfer money into hundreds of millions of bank accounts in real time without human intervention. And they were able to get the money within 24 hours. At the same time, there's another part of this infrastructure called the Aadhaar enabled payment system, which allows people in villages to withdraw money from their bank account by just doing an Aadhaar authentication and going to a nearby business correspondent. And this allowed people to get their money very quickly. So this is a great example of how, when you have invested in creating population scale digital infrastructure, it can become useful in the most unexpected situation. This infrastructure was not designed for the pandemic, but it was able to rise to the occasion during the pandemic. And that's just one example of the kind of infrastructure that India has created. Another example of that is UPI, which Anjali mentioned. UPI was the initiative at the NPCI, the National Payment Corporation of India, where I'm an advisor on innovation and public policy. This is an idea which we thought about 8 years back, and it took us several years to get the system to agree and sort of understand what it was. And we are very, very fortunate that the RBI was hugely supportive, and the RBI launched the UPI platform in May of 2016. And by October of 2016, the system was doing just 100,000 transactions a day. And then demonetization happened. And suddenly the transaction volume went up. The Prime Minister launched the BHIM application. Later on, many other applications came forth like Google Pay, WhatsApp Pay, Phone Pay, Paytm, and all that. And today that system does more than 3 billion transactions a month and is at the cutting edge of digital payments in India. And the good thing is that it's a completely democratized digital payment. When I go around in Bangalore, any shop will take a UPI payment. Any vegetable vendor is now taking UPI payments. The guy selling coconuts on the sidewalk is taking digital payments. So I think UPI has dramatically changed the nature of digital payments in India. And it's also an example of combinatorial innovation, because SEBI was very, very successful in using UPI for the ASBA scheme for reserving money for IPOs. And I believe that one of the reasons why we are having such a good response to IPOs is that people now can just click on the smartphone and apply for a share, and the money is only deducted when the actual allocation happens. Also, UPI has got recurring mandates, so you can use that to do SIPs and stuff like that. So I think the point is that all this infrastructure has really made a difference in the life of the common man. A third example of the digital public infrastructure is FASTag. FASTag is a system designed by the Ministry of Road Transport. I actually headed a committee in 2010, which came out with the design of RFID-based tolling, which is what FASTag is. And today, anyone traveling on an Indian highway does not have to stop at the toll booth and put his pocket and try to take out change and all that. He just has to have an RFID tag, FASTag attached to his car or truck, and they can just drive through the toll gate, and attached to the RFID tag is a payment instrument like a bank account or a wallet, and automatically the toll is deducted. And that has dramatically improved the efficiency of our highways, as trucks and cars are able to go through numerous toll gates in very little time. So I think these are just some examples of how India has invested in public digital infrastructure. This has been possible because of a unique collaboration. At the government level, we have had leaders like Prime Minister Modi, Mr. Piyush Goyal, and many others, Mr. Sitaraman, many others who have been very, very technology savvy. And the Prime Minister has been pushing use of technology. Recently, if you noticed, he launched a product called e-Rupee, which is a purpose-defined voucher you can use to give somebody a voucher so that they can get a free vaccination or they can buy the fertilizer or whatever. So you can see that on the government side, there's tremendous appetite for all these technologies, and all of them come under the umbrella of Digital India. And that's something which has been very, very powerful. Similarly, our businesses have embraced technology in a big way. And as Anjali mentioned, the whole COVID has shown that you cannot really exist in today's world without a digital strategy. So we're seeing huge amount of investment and adoption of digital transformation technology. And the regulators have also been very supportive, whether it's the RBI, SEBI, IRDA, PFRDA, and so on. All of them are very supportive of technology-based solutions. So all this has played a big role in digital public infrastructure. A very important innovation in this that is coming shortly is called DEPA, Data Empowerment and Protection Architecture, which is a very unique model of where people and businesses can leverage data for themselves. It's a way of empowering data for themselves. And India has built a unique infrastructure called account aggregators, who sit between information providers and information users on your behalf. And you can use them to get your data to get certain things. For example, if I'm a small business, it's very difficult for me to get a loan today from the normal system because you don't have any asset collateral, you are a very small company, and it's very difficult for the bank or the NBFC to give you a loan because they don't have the space to time to really do a proper credit check and so on. Tomorrow, with this account aggregator model, a small business, an MSME, can leverage its bank statement, its GST return filing, its invoice details, get it from various data sources and give it to a lender. And the lender will then use that data and give you a loan. And this is what is called as information collateral. So earlier we thought of asset collateral as the basis for giving loans. But for the first time, thanks to the digital footprint that all of us have, we can now have information collateral, which allows small businesses to get loans. And I personally believe that when the pandemic is over and we want to revive our economy, one of the ways is to use information collateral to democratize credit for millions of small businesses so that they have the money to invest in inventory and hiring. And that massive credit recovery will happen. And I believe that can lead to a big change in the way that the economy recovers. So in fact, for economic recovery, this is very important. Just like UPI was a big part of the demonetization and the transition to digital payments, I believe that the DEPA or account aggregator framework, which is empowering credit, will be a big part of the post-COVID recovery for India. So I think this also has been possible because India has a lot of public spirited technologists and other individuals who are all willing to give volunteer time and effort to design these systems. Many of them worked with me on the Aadhaar project. Many people are there in NPCI, which is a non-profit, but has some of the best talent in the country. And they have designed a lot of payment platforms, be it UPI, IMPS, which is a very powerful platform for remittances, which is used by people to send money to their family members back in the village, or the Bharat bill payment system, which is now going to make bill payment entirely digital, or they also run the FASTag, which I mentioned. So I think very fortunate that we have a very good set of people who are also willing not only to just to make money, but also to use their talent to build technology for the future. And we also have organizations like iSpirit, which is a volunteer group, which I believe Sharad spoke to you earlier. We have a group called Sahamati, which is an aggregation of all the account aggregators, who is going to push the account aggregator scheme. So a lot of things happening and a moment happening. Now, one thing that UPI taught us was that you could essentially unbundle payments. And instead of one company, if you look at what's happening in China, for example, payments are just provided by two companies. And if you're on one payment system, you can't use the other guy's payment system. I mean, now the Chinese government is now changing it and trying to make all this interoperable. India actually anticipated the situation and came out with an interoperable payment system, UPI, which allowed you to have a bank account in any bank, but the front-end distribution app could be from anybody else, and you could make payment to somebody else whose bank account was in some other bank and who was using some other app. For example, I could have my bank account in State Bank of India, I could be using Google Pay, and you could be using, your account could be in HDFC Bank, and you could be using WhatsApp Pay, and all this is happening seamlessly. Similarly, the QR codes in UPI are interoperable. So if a merchant sets up a UPI QR code, anyone who has a UPI app can make a payment to that merchant. Doesn't have to be only from that product. So all these lessons of interoperability, portability, and so on were very well shown in the UPI example. And recently, as you know, the government has looked at how to make commerce interoperable. And Anjali has been a very big part of that. And now we have the movement to set up the open network for data for commerce called ONDC, which essentially tries to bring in a UPI kind of approach to e-commerce and allows many small companies to participate in e-commerce, many logistic providers to participate in e-commerce, and many people on their own consumer app can discover the product, order it, get it shipped, etc. And doesn't have to rely on one company, but this whole unbundling. And ONDC is really not an application; it's a protocol. It's the language by which all the players will talk to each other. And this is an initiative of Commerce Minister, Mr. Goyal. And this is another example of India's thinking about public digital infrastructure. Now, one thing is that India has been a world leader in this. Many countries now are coming forward. I'm doing 2 events next week with a set of global organizations, all of whom are realizing that in this extremely digitally intensive world, it can't just be relying on a few private companies to provide digital infrastructure. The government also has to enable some of these rails, these interoperable rails on which innovation can happen. So this is a very good mix of the government providing the rails on which innovation happens, and then private companies using those rails to provide services to companies. For example, on UPI, we have many unicorns like PhonePe. There's another company called BharatPe, which has got a multi-billion-dollar valuation that runs on top of UPI. So once you set up these rails, then innovation will emerge. So the idea is to find the right balance between providing interoperable rails and letting private innovation flourish. And that's something which in India we've been able to do. So let me end by saying that thank you for this, and thank you, Anjali, Sudhir, and all of you for calling me here. India is a world leader in digital public infrastructure, and I think we need to continue on this. And the pandemic has only shown the importance of having digital public infrastructure at scale so that the country can flourish. We have great support from the Prime Minister and his cabinet, and this is something that can lead to high economic growth in an equitable manner. So thank you, and happy to take questions, Anjali.
Thank you so much, Nandan. It's always really inspiring to hear you, and you feel that anything is possible because you've shown that it can actually be possible. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Anjali.
I have a question from Arnab Kumar, who says, in the post-pandemic India, what new population/India scale tech platforms should the tech community focus on?
Thank you, Anjali. I think there are 2 or 3. It's a great question and very timely. I think there are two or three areas where we need to focus. One is clearly on healthcare and creating the National Digital Health Mission. Fortunately, now we have the National Health Authority. It's headed by my good friend, Ram Sevak Sharma, who was my partner in Aadhaar. He's a brilliant technocrat come bureaucrat. He's an IAS officer who does programming as a hobby. So he's a terrific guy. And he's taken on the mandate of taking NHDM and setting up a digital infrastructure for health, electronic health records. He also was responsible for making CoWIN work. Today, we have a platform in CoWIN where 500 million, vaccinations have been done. And, in many cases, the Aadhaar has been used to do the verification. And we are also the only country in the world which has a digital certificate issued to everybody. So when you get the CoWIN, then you just ask for your certificate and you get on your phone. And this certificate is secure, it's signed, it has a QR code, it can be offline on a printed copy, it can be online in your smartphone. You can store it in the digital locker, which is another part of the India stack. And this is now becoming globally standard. In fact, the WHO is looking at India's digital certificate and seeing how it can be used as a standard. Sri Lanka is rolling out a digital certificate using the same standard. So health is one big area. Education is another big area because Our children have lost out for 2 years of not being able to go to school. And the new health minister, Mr. Pradhan, has been focused on this. They have a whole initiative called, Diksha, which is a technology platform which is being used across the country. So education is another one. The judicial system is a third, because we need to improve the quality of and speed at which judgments are made. We have a lot of work going on in the judiciary. The Justice Chandrachud has been leading an e-committee which is looking at a lot of judicial tech reforms. And then finally, the use of AI in a big way, because now with so much data coming out, in a secure and private manner, we need to apply this data for AI. For example, AI is being used in the GST system to catch fraud. One of the reasons for the GST improvement, I believe, is the use of AI for fraud detection. And then there's the National Language Translation Mission, which is using AI to be able to do speech and text conversion in all Indian languages, which will allow all of us to communicate in our language of choice in a very effective way in the coming years. So I think there are many, many initiatives, and of course, ONDC is there. So we have had 10 years of great stuff, but we have another 10 years of stuff, all of which is going to fundamentally transform India's economy and society.
Thank you. So healthcare, education, information equity, Indic languages, judicial reform and expediency, if you will, and reduce the pendency of cases, which I know is a real sort of bottleneck for ease of doing business as well. So lots to be done.
Oh, yeah.
There is one area that, and someone has asked a question on that, is agriculture. And India is still largely a rural country with reducing dependence on agriculture, but still a strong dependence on agriculture. How can we use technology and digital and this kind of digital infrastructure? You mentioned AI. We are already starting to see startups that are taking large data sets to help farmers from input point of view on what to grow and so on. But beyond that, at a, again, national level, how can technology be better used?
No, I think there are many aspects to this. One is giving farmers access to markets, and things like ENAM are being done, which are online agricultural marketplaces where people can trade. We are seeing many, many tech-enabled supply chain companies coming. There are huge investments happening in the grocery sector from big companies, global multinational startups. All of that should help to improve the supply chain and allow farmers to connect to the market better, get better prices for their produce. At the same time, the consumers will get lower prices for their consumption. Then there's the whole issue of using data on the crop side. And as we get more and more data about crops, crop health, weather, all that, I think a lot of technology and AI can be used to improve the choices of farmers. We can also look at farmers participating in virtual aggregation, because unlike in the West where you have large farms, India has many, many small farms. But just like we can virtually aggregate them and create a virtual large farm where they all participate in the same supply chain, but they're all individual growers. So I think there's no limit to what can be done in AI, in agriculture. And I think both from the government as well as from the startup and private sector, there's a lot of action happening, Anjali.
Indeed. So I just wanted to thank Vikas Chandak. This question was from him, and I think it's a very timely question also. What are other questions that we have? Questions coming in all the time. Somebody asked about what will be the share of digital economy in our GDP in 2025?
Well, I don't know. I do know, for example, that in the US, Satya Nadella has made a statement that the US economy has about 5% of GDP is digital technology, and his estimate is that it will go to 10% of GDP by 2030. But this is a very US-centric estimate. I think in India, I don't know. I mean, I've not looked at it from a GDP perspective, but it is going to go up dramatically. I mean, we're seeing this happening. I mean, the pandemic has shown that whether it's education, we want to do online classes at home, whether it's entertainment, we want to watch Z and Netflix at home, whether it's food, we want to order from Swiggy and Zomato at home, whether it is e-commerce, we go to all these guys, groceries, we go to Big Basket, whatever. Fundamentally, I think people have realized that technology and the fact that we're using Zoom and other things to do these events. So I think the pandemic has been a crash course in digitization for all of us. I mean, grandmothers talking to their grandchildren over Zoom and so on. So fundamentally, I think this has been a forced habit change that the whole world has got, Indians have got. And I think this will only accelerate digital adoption in India.
There's a question on timeline of ONDC becoming a reality.
Anjali, you have to answer that, yeah.
My friend, this is anonymous, so please wait and see. We have just started, but it is a large program and we hope it will be very effective in not too long.
What is my friend Nilesh doing? He's sitting there quietly.
I'm going to call on Nilesh in just a minute. Just a minute.
Yeah, all right, boss.
Nilesh will tell us what will the share if markets.
He does all that.
Now, I have just one question, Nandan.
Yeah.
While on one side we are creating digital economy, it is also creating disruption in old economy, traditional economy. What should we be doing to ensure that the old economy and the traditional economy also get supported by digital, and the pace of disruption is carrying them also along with them?
No, I think that's a great question, Nilesh. And I think and this is not just an Indian problem, it's a global issue, because traditional businesses that are not digital natives have often been caught on the wrong foot with this digital tsunami which has come. I mean, give an example in the US, retail, for example, some of the old companies have done extremely well. The traditional companies like Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Lowe's have done phenomenally well in the pandemic because they had very good digital platforms and physical platforms. But many of the retailers who were still stuck only in retail outlets and had not built a digital storefront actually went into bankruptcy. So I think a lot depends on that. In India, I'm actually finding very, very good examples of digital adoption by, not natives, but people who came to digital. I mean, the other day I was just talking to the Bajaj Finance guys. Extraordinary how they're using technology, and they build this massive franchise with digital. So I think everybody can adopt digital, and I think now the barrier has come down because we have cloud, we have open source software, we have a lot of tools, SaaS platforms. So the barrier of entry for companies to adopt technology has gone down. But it's really about a mindset. The boardroom must understand that digital is critical to survival. I mean, in every industry, not just in digital industries. And I think that hopefully the pandemic has brought that to everybody's notice. So I'm actually quite bullish on Indian companies using technology in a transformational way.
Thank you.
And before we let you go, Nandan, I have one question.
Sure, Anjali.
We are all technology and digital bulls, and we believe in it. We believe in the power of transformation and innovation. How should technology be best made responsible? So responsible technology, responsible AI, as we think about a world that is fundamentally more sustainable and more equitable.
Well, I think there are many aspects to this, Anjali. Obviously, on the AI side, we have to have clear ground rules on how AI is applied and how the data for AI does not have a bias. Because the problem with AI is that if you train your AI on data which does not have a truly representative sample of the people, then the results are biased. And we are seeing that in many applications in the West. But it's more than that, it's also about equity. For example, when we designed the payment system transformation of India, we looked at all categories of people. We had people at the top end who had smartphones. So we had 300 million people with smartphones. Then we had people at the middle with feature phones. So we had another 300 million people with feature phones. And then we had another 300 million people who didn't have any phones whatsoever. And we had to make sure that digital payments were accessible to all these three. And the way we did that was UPI was available on the smartphone. So the smartphone guy could use any app that he wanted, Google or WhatsApp or whatever, Paytm and so on. So that they were all well covered, they were well served. Then we made sure that the UPI is also, NPCI made sure UPI is also there for feature phones. And now there are many efforts afoot to make feature phone users use UPI modes. That covers another lot. And most importantly, for the people who had no phones, they still had an Aadhaar. So 1.3 billion people have an Aadhaar. They can go to a business correspondent, use their Aadhaar, do an eKYC, open a bank account, and then they can go to the BC to transact on the bank account. So they don't have a device, they don't have, but they still have an Aadhaar and a bank account, and they can transact using the Aadhaar-enabled payment system. So we made sure that every part of the society had access to payments. So when you design these national systems, you have to think of equity, accessibility, and make sure that every part of society is able to transact.
Indeed, and we say that training AI is like raising children. They will grow up to be with the values you instill in it. So the
No, it's actually, if you see the recent stuff like GPT-3 and all that, they say that they're now doing things they were not even designed to do. So it's getting a little worrisome.
Indeed, indeed. Well, thank you again, Nandan. And
Thank
on
you,
this
Anjali.
note, I'm going to turn over to Nilesh. And Nilesh, as you pointed out, I think enterprises today have to recognize that digital is not a vertical. It's not a neat, cute vertical. It's a horizontal.
The fabric.
It's a fabric. But I turn it over to Nilesh, my colleague, dear friend, and partner at Bombay Chamber, to please deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Anjali. I am indeed privileged to perform the pleasant task of proposing the vote of thanks at the 185th Annual General Meeting of Bombay Chambers. On behalf of Bombay Chamber and entire Board of Directors, I extend sincere thanks to our chief guest, Shri Nandan Nilekani. What can I say about Nandan? Many people would have retired after creating something like Infosys. But in your second inning, you have created a bigger impact than Infosys. Aadhaar has now become the base for so many things on digital infrastructure. And the biggest benefit of Aadhaar is not what it is helping to create, but what is actually helping to avoid. The amount of leakages which Indian system was having has been plugged thanks to Aadhaar. And we all have to thank Nandan for the great work you have done and you are continuously doing. Thank you for educating us about the future of the digital infrastructure. And we look forward to your guidance and support on taking it forward. At Bombay Chamber, we believe in closely engaging and collaborating with the government and regulatory authorities in matters that require a healthy overlap of policy, administration, and entrepreneurial execution. We do hope to continue working hand in hand with both the government and regulatory authorities to ensure an impetus to industry growth and growth in the economy, as well as in making Mumbai an international hub for business and financial services. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Mr. Sudhir Kapadia for leading the chamber throughout the last year, and it was indeed a year of major initiatives and events. Anjali, I must thank you for your mission statement, which charts our path for the next year. You have articulated yours and Bombay Chamber's priorities that are very relevant in current scenario and going forward, which go beyond the narrow perspective of industry. I assure you my full support during the coming year. I would like to thank the board members, past presidents, members of the various expert committees for taking time from their busy schedule and joining us for this important event. All the activities and attainments of the Bombay Chamber cannot be accomplished without the strong and consistent support from the Chamber Secretariat. I would like to thank Director General Sandeep Khoshla and each and every member of the Secretariat for their commitment and non-stop work. Before I conclude my address and the AGM, I thank every member for attending today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you all, everyone. Thank you for
Okay,
attending.
bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye. Bye.
everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Sandeep, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Anjali. At 6 o'clock sharp, we have concluded today's AGM and look forward to next year now, next year's AGM. Before that, I think we have a lot of tasks cut out to ensure that we implement whatever you listed down as our mission statements. So thank you to the team for putting this together. Bye, Nilesh. Bye. Thank you, Sudhir. Thank you, Anjali.